Hey, I'll see you in Rutherford, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Ontario, California, Davenport, Iowa, Las Vegas, Chicago, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. We have this guy, Chris Cuomo. Now he's running around because he got vaccine injured, and he's taking ivermectin, and he's talking about how we were lied to about ivermectin. Meanwhile, he spent 3 years shaming anybody who told you the truth about it, and when only taking a Google search for him to find out that ivermectin was a human medicine and that they scared you by saying it was a horse dewormer, don't take it, it'll make you sick, that it's only for animals, that if it would have really literally 30 seconds of a Google search, he would have found out that it won the Nobel Prize for Human Medicine. It's on the WHO list of essential medicines, and now he's running around going, all the clinicians knew that ivermectin was safe and it was a human medicine, and he says, I know that now because I'm talking to them. Well, I guess he wasn't talking to anybody for 3 years when he was shaming everybody. And so now you know, what do you make of those people, right? Does it take somebody to get vaccine injured to come tell the truth? And now they're trying to absolve all their past sins, and the people who aren't trying to absolve their past sins are trying to memory hold them, like, oh, COVID's over, let's move on. Yeah. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, memory holding is right. Absolutely, one of the most sinister aspects to this, and the thing that has me most enraged at the moment, is the number of the people that were pushing it, that were cheerleaders for it, that were instigators of it, that helped to choreograph it and led it on and did all the shaming and the ridiculing and the name calling and all of the rest of it. And they think that it's already time that we've all forgotten. I find, as you say, with someone like Chris Cuomo, who seems to think that nobody kept receipts, that nobody kept recordings of things that were said just a couple of years ago. The idea that they can already absolve themselves of all sin and pretend that they were on our side of the line the whole time without at any moment pausing to draw breath and say, I really messed up massively. My behavior was inexcusable. I'm ashamed. I look back now and I see how I was, and I see the way that I treated fellow human beings, othering, making out that human beings who hadn't taken an experimental medical intervention were vectors of disease, unclean. I'm, mea culpa. I feel so terrible about it. But they've missed that bit out altogether, and they've just jumped the fence, and they're now pretending that they were here promoting the efficacy of ivermectin and encouraging people to my body, my choice all along. That's the sinister bit. It's how quickly they think that everyone has forgotten. And maybe I think many people who took the products, and many people did it to keep their jobs, and because they were genuinely frightened, and because they really thought that they were doing the right thing, and because they had been persuaded that it was the right thing for their communities and all of the rest of it. And now those people. Now, I think so many of those people just can't believe that they did it, which is understandable. And so there is a big appetite out there to forget and move on. But I think it's absolutely beholden on people like us to say, no, there's a stage we've got to go through, and it's owning up, taking responsibility, accepting responsibility, and acknowledging what was done. I mean, many people, like the Jordan Petersons and many other people out there have said that in the West, we all grew up in the second half of the 20th century or whatever, believing when we watched the movies that we would have joined the French resistance, that we would have sheltered our neighbours, that we would have been the heroes. That was the way everyone was invited to think. That was the vicarious thrill of those maverick characters that were invited to worship on celluloid. But the COVID experience showed so many people that actually, when the single choice of their generation came down the line at them, they were Gestapo. they were ready to don the uniform and kick the doors in. And I think that's an incredibly difficult realization for people. That when the choice was finally there, when we were being sorted, when that sorting of people was going on, so many people went the wrong way, and there's an enormous reckoning that has to be lived up to and lived through and accepted. And unless and until that happens, people like me are going to keep on banging on and saying, no, we were there. It's all on record, what you did, what you said. And the extent to which COVID was simply used as a tool to open a door to bring in this technological revolution, which leads to a digital archipelago. We can see it. It's plain. It's evident and clear. And as long as it's incumbent upon enough of us just to, because it doesn't take everyone. It's incumbent that there just be enough of us that say, no, we remember exactly what happened, who said what, and the consequences that need to apply.
Well, Dr. Fauci, who was the biggest pusher of all the propaganda around masks and the vaccines and mandates and 6-foot social distancing and locking down schools and shutting businesses and masking children and toddlers. And he was the biggest one screaming about that always. He's now being questioned in front of Congress today in the United States, finally, in 2024, June. And you have Democrats who are running cover for him as if it's some kind of partisan attack against him. And they've made it political in the United States. I don't know what it's like in Scotland, but they made anybody who questioned the establishment narrative or questioned the science that they were being told was the science, which is how science works. You question it. And if you can't question it, it's not science. That's religion. And so what all those people, I don't know if it was like that in Scotland. If you question it, you were considered a right-wing conspiracy theorist, crazy. Is that what happened?
By now, Jimmy, I mean, 4 years in, because for me, it started with COVID. I started for the first time really in my life. Well, I mean, I spoke out about COVID, but then I've spoken out about everything else since. I've spoken out about the Ukraine war. I've spoken out about what's happening in Gaza. I've spoken out about the climate hoax. I'm away out where the buses don't go, and I have been, I've been called everything. I've been an aluminium hat wearing crank. I've been an anti-vaxxer. I've been a granny killer. I've been a Putin apologist. I've been I've been anti-Semitic. I've had everything labelled at me. But to be quite frank, 4 years in, if you're not being abused in that way, or if you haven't been the subject of that kind of flack, then you're not in the fight. You're not in the game. It's a badge of honour to be treated in this way. And it's worth remembering anyway that no good deed goes unpunished. That's just a fact of life that predates all of this. People are in a hurry to forgive themselves and to forgive each other for the sins that were committed. But what will never be forgotten and will never be forgotten, what will never be forgotten and will never be forgiven are the people who were just right. They called it right. That'll never be forgiven. That's unforgivable, having been right about this stuff. And as I say, no good deed goes unpunished. It's extra. If you're complicit in the general crime, and you go, well, we forgive each other. Yeah, I'll forgive myself. Will you forgive yourself? Yes, I'll forgive you. You forgive me. And let's all move on. But those characters over there that called it right and asked the right questions, we'll get them later. We'll let the dust settle, but we've got their names and addresses. I mean, that's what it feels like.
Well, that's how trauma-based mind control works.
Yeah,
you'll never be forgiven for being right.
Well, I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I realized that when I would bring on comedian friends of mine who were pro-mandate, pro-masking, pro-lockdown, all the propaganda, people who do shows that are called Exposing Government Secrets, came on and just didn't care about the secrets, didn't question, and they came on and they were 100,000% wrong, and they wanted workers to get fired for not taking mandated experimental therapy and all kinds of stuff like that. And what I had said, I realized it's like, I can forgive them for being wrong, but they will never forgive me for being right. And that's exactly what's happened. No one has ever come back to me and said, hey, you know what? I was wrong about that. You were right. I'm sorry. No, they still call me a right winger. They still, all the names, the conspiracy theorists, the racists, the anti-Semitic, and all that stuff.
Have you encountered Vera Sharif in your travels so far? She an older lady. She was with her mother when she was about 4 or 5 years old. She and her mother ended up in a concentration camp. The Jewish mother and daughter, And they survived the camp. And Vera Sharaf has lived most of her life in the USA. She's at least in her 80s now. I brought her onto my show on GB News because she had brought out a documentary called Never Again Is Now, a 5-part documentary series, where she was pointing out the fact that she was, with great pain in her heart, was watching tactics that she had seen used against the Jewish populations in the 1930s and elsewhere in Europe. She'd watched some of it surfacing again, this othering of people on the grounds of, being unclean, being vectors of disease, being liable to infect, and therefore being the sort of people who should be shunned. And she was saying that these are the warning signs. You can't allow this. This is the on-ramp to a motorway that goes to a very dark place. Vera Sharaf has been convicted of being a Holocaust denier in, I think, Bavaria. But she is a in absentia, in absence. She is convicted of denying the Holocaust. Now, she is a survivor of the camps. And I had her on, and I spoke to her, just for a few minutes, really, and we talked about our documentary series. And it was in the aftermath of talking like that I too was labelled as anti-Semitic at that point. Now, that's upside down through the looking glass Alice in Wonderland world. That's I don't know where to begin to process being perceived in that way by some parts of the mainstream media. It's so ludicrous.
It's a magical curse now.
I daren't look at it because that's so absurd. That's so ridiculous that even to dignify that with a response would be difficult to process. But you're absolutely right. Your friends, they will not. I've had hatchet jobs done on me in the national press by people who were friends of mine years ago. They suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Hadn't spoken to them in a long, long time, but they came on to deliver hatchet jobs about if I'd known what he was like when I met him at the time, I would have crossed the street to avoid him. All of that has gone on, and it will never be the case. You can be as wrong as you like, and then there's a mutual forgiveness goes on. But if you were right, that's unforgivable.
So I know how they're in a hurry to memory hole it. They tried to say COVID's over. That's yesterday. Who cares? I think we need to have a South African truth and reconciliation kind of happening, and it seems like it's starting right now with Fauci today in Congress. I don't know if you saw any of those videos. Hey, have you ever wondered what happened to Chuck Norris? I did. I recently saw a video. There's a video of him, and first of all, he looks fantastic. He says he's got more energy than he did 10 years ago, and he's even stronger than he's been in the last 10 years. He can work out longer, and he has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. That's what he says. Chuck Norris, he's 80. He did this by making one change. What's that? He says he feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing it, this one thing, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger. Her body looks leaner. She's got energy all day long. What's the one thing? Well, Chuck made a special video that explains it. I watched the whole video. It's a good video. Actually, I did. I liked the video. I was interested, and I think I'm going to start taking this stuff. Anyway, it's going to change the way you go to chuckdefense.com/Jimmy. Go to chuckdefense.com/Jimmy, and you can click the link below of this video, and it will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/Jimmy, and click on the link in the description below to watch the video. You're not going to believe how simple it is. Just a reminder, the legendary Chuck Norris is a whopping 81 years old and yet has more energy than me. Well, that's not saying much. He looks fantastic. He discovered he could create dramatic changes to his health simply focusing on 3 things that sabotage our body as we age. Watch this method by clicking the link in the description below, chuckdefense.com/Jimmy. You come see me on tour in Rutherford, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Ontario, California, Las Vegas, Davenport, Iowa, Chicago, Illinois. We're doing a live panel video show, special surprise guests on that show, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and make sure you go to Jimmy Dore because they don't want to buy it from a second reseller.